You want every single person in that organization to buy into a specific purpose for the organization so that we could all jump in the boat and row in the same direction, not just in the same direction, but in the right direction.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I'm your host, Nick Olsen. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. My guest today is a seasoned entrepreneur, business owner, and culture branding expert. He has worked with more than 200 organizations building and aligning cultures for sustained performance and growth. He is a host of a TV show called Language of Leadership. He enjoys riding a Harley, has played and coached college baseball. Please welcome my guest today, Mark Iorio. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Nick. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
You know, one thing when I met you, one thing we connected on is coaching and playing baseball in the collegiate level. And so how has your baseball career, playing and coaching, how has that impacted your professional career from a standpoint of just, your success?
Listen, I played at a D3 level in New Jersey. I loved it. I enjoyed working with a lot of coaches that really I admired. They taught me a lot about trying to keep an even keel and becoming a better version of myself each day and working hard to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And that translates very nicely into, what I do as a professional, a business professional, Nick. So, a lot of times people don't take those tips and the way people deal with them, the nurturing that a coach, a baseball coach or an athletic coach would give you. But I learned a lot. I really did. I learned a ton about how to lose. I never liked losing. I never liked losing, but you deal with that in business, right? You have to. You deal with winning, you deal with losing, but it's very important to keep an even keel, and my coaches in college were great. So learned a lot about that.
Yeah, don't get too high, don't get too low, next play up, kind of mentality, and you can't do anything about the past. And how can you learn from it? How can you be better the next time? Go out there and compete. And those are the things that, like you said, is kind of what I hopefully bring to my professional career in business as well. What is your top baseball, whether it's coaching or playing, moment that you can share with me?
It's always about the team, right? So never forget finally going to the regionals, NCAA regionals. We played at Lynchburg College in Virginia in front of a pretty big crowd. And, while we didn't make the next round, the enjoyment of competing at that level and remembering the other players from the other teams, the competitors was a blast. And, I won't tell you how long ago it was, but a long time, I mean, if we get together, the teammates get together, we still reminisce about those wonderful moments that we had. And some of the funny moments, I remember taking a ground ball up in the center field. And although we lost the game 5-0 to Rowan University, which is in New Jersey. It used to be called Glassboro University, Glassboro State. Ground ball up the middle, Nick, guy rounding third base, and I airmailed it into the seats from center field. So, I remember moments like that, but other great moments as well. But it's always about the team. It's always about something you do to beat a team. Or I got a ton of memories, but that's the one that sticks out.
Yeah, love it. And playing on a team, you hit it well, and and you are an expert in just building culture and brand alignment and things like that. And does that that team aspect, that culture, that connectivity, I would imagine that somehow relates to your playing days and coaching days, but which positions you very well to be able to teach others on culture and the brand and how they're aligned and whatnot.
That's a great question. A lot of moments in athletics are defined by what the purpose of the season will be, or what the purpose of, a particular game will be. And there's always a purpose. There's always something that you look toward, a North Star in a sense. Business, unfortunately, is not typically like that unless you figure out a way to define purpose. And with our alignment process, the brand and culture alignment process, we get organizations to find that purpose. Who are you when you're doing your best work on your best day to deliver all of your promises and achieve all of your goals? What do you look like? And with sports, with baseball, it was always easy. We want to win the division. We want to be selected to go to the NCAAs. It's easy. Now, what do you do each and every day to get there? You can't just
Right.
say at the end of a 45 game schedule in the spring, oh, we're 25 and 20. We didn't win the division. What do you need to do each and every day to get there? That's the key.
Right.
So with business, it's the same thing, Nick. It's what can I do each and every day to help migrate the culture of this organization toward our purpose, toward our North Star. So it taught me a lot about that. And you try to make the correlation between sports and business. Some people don't get it.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of parallels there and a lot of things that you can benefit from being in team sports and in other activities as well. But that competitiveness and having to work together as a team and working for a common goal and understanding, how you're going to get there, like you said, each and every day. And I think people sometimes will just look at the end goal or the big picture, and they're not getting down into, I can't go and do what I need to do in the future. I can only focus on like right now, and I can't dwell in the past. That's not going to change. So what can you do today to create and sustain and grow yourself for the betterment of your team, whether it's in business or sports?
Yeah.
And so what do you define culture as? I know we all heard that term, we understand that term, but in your eyes, Mark, what is culture?
It's a collection, Nick, of how we behave each and every day, the delivery of the promise that we make to every single stakeholder we come in contact with. What does that culture look like? And we use a 4-factor model in developing culture. It's like any 4-factor model that anyone has ever been involved or touched. DISC, Myers-Briggs, Hogan, whatever. A lot of the research that Carl Jung did back in the 1930s, personality types, is a paper he published in 1921. And we took that and distilled it into a team archetype. So anyway, if you deliver on that brand promise each and every day consistently, then that defines the culture in your organization. It's very, very intentional. It's not something that, comes without a lot of work and a lot of diligence. So, you can define culture by looking at that 4-factor model. And I can explain what that looks like, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's why don't you explain what that 4-factor model looks like and how that mentality and that process, is aligning with the company's brand as well, because I would imagine those two coexist.
Yeah, they do. Yep, exactly. So there's four factors that we use are teams that are more oriented around innovation or creativity or outside the box thinking. And by the way, this correlates directly with our frontal cortex. So, you look at the words that you use each and every day in describing a brand, and part of that frontal cortex, the quadrants in the frontal cortex, fire off. And you could see PET scan data that indicates that. So if you use words like creativity, innovation, outside the box thinking, etc., a part of your frontal cortex fires off. So there are companies that are really innovative, really, creative organizations. Then in the second box is direct organizations, dominant organizations, driver organizations, get things done on time. Thirdly, organizations that are more wrapped around precision, analytics, making sure that every T is crossed, every I is dotted. They're very much attention to detail. And then the last is companies that are more oriented around people, harmony, fairness, following the rules, but making sure everyone is treated properly. And so when we do our survey, you will select adjectives, words that best describe your organization. And depending on what words you select, that's where the connection between the promise that you make in an organization and the delivery of that promise. Here's an example. If you're an organization that is more innovative, outside the box thinker, that doesn't mean, okay, Nick, you come into the organization, I want you to be more creative. That's not the way it goes. If you're an innovative organization, generally speaking, if someone comes into your office and says, hey, Nick, I've got a few ideas, and you say, Mark, don't have time for you right now. Sorry. Go away. When I have a few minutes, I'll call you in, and you never do. In an organization where you're innovative, you're going to sit down with me and you're going to say, all right, I'll give you 5 minutes. Talk about the new idea. I'll listen. I'll jot down you'll jot down what I said, maybe repeat it back to me. And what that tells me is you're open-minded. You're thinking about the idea that I have and not dismissing it. So you've got a couple of factors in there. You care about me as a person, which is the other quadrant, and you're listening twice as much as you speak, which is the innovation quadrant. That's behavior. You're starting to see that culture exist within the organization. You're delivering on the promise that you make as a team. So that takes an effort. You have to consciously think about that. It's not something that you just do willy-nilly. So that's how those two things blend together. That's what the 4-factor model is. Every single person in the organization takes the survey. We take the results of the survey, we plot it on the quadrant, and then based on where you land, the top 3 areas in that result are typically the way you behave as an organization. And then the last step is, what can you do each day, which is what we talked about before about baseball. What can you do each day to make yourself a better part of this team so that the team becomes, better overall?
And is that part of the survey, or is that something that you do once you know the where everything lands, and you're talking like integration of the culture, and like where does that come in the process, and how does that work?
Yep. So good question. The survey results are plotted. We take an average of where the whole team landed, plot it, and then we start to develop a set of, we call them aligned inspirations. Nick, you call them whatever you'd like. We call them aligned inspirations. They're commandments. They're how we behave as a team. You land in that one quadrant, you're innovative. Secondly, you might be people-oriented. Thirdly, you might be very analytical. So what's that look like in a aligned inspiration model? Well, I'm going to make sure I listen twice as much as I speak. I'm going to care about the people that I work with. And I'm going to make sure every single proposal that goes out the door is perfect. There's no mistakes in it. I'll have people double check it, etc. So we'll help them build aligned inspirations. And then, from there, we either meet on a regular basis, monthly, or we have a new partner called Ngomu. And Ngomu is an app that Al Wynant and his team developed that has the actual goal on the mobile app, so that it reminds you every day, every couple of days, what promise you made. And it has these built-in coaches to be able to say, Nick, you said you were going to do this. How's that coming along? And it's a supportive mechanism so that I don't have to be there physically every single month, pulling the entire team out of the field and putting them in a 2.5-hour workshop. The app is a deterrent to that, because a lot of times you're busy. Your team's busy. You can't take that team offline for 2 hours. Can't do it. So what ends up happening is you subscribe to the app, and it's a reminder every day. So it takes that effort. You know that as a baseball player.
So why do you think the daily, like I said, daily or however frequently the reminders are important? Because, that's something that obviously you've integrated into your process, but also find its value working with your clients. So I guess kind of explain why that's so important.
Because we as human beings forget. We don't have the way we learn is spaced repetition, right? So if you forget to, like, if I come to you once a month and you assemble your entire team and we meet on a monthly basis, it's 30 days. You know what happened yesterday. You forgot what you ate for lunch. So, if you're not reminded on a regular basis, oftentimes, you're busy. You get distracted. You may forget. You may not care. So the app is reminding you on a fairly regular basis. As I said, every 2 days, it could be every day, whatever cadence, works for you, is helpful.
Yeah. And I think those constant reminders are nice to have so you don't, go 30 days and be like, what just happened the
Yeah.
last
What
month?
happened?
I have
Yeah.
no idea. I have no idea. And did I follow those inspirations that we created as a company? I have no idea. So I like that. You talk about you worked with over 200 organizations. What are some of the key areas of opportunity, I'll call it, that you see in companies that you've worked with that maybe are missing the boat on culture? What are some common, things that you see that companies maybe can improve on?
God, tons. One is that most companies think that culture is, scheduling a pizza Friday or a taco Tuesday or putting a ping pong table into a lunchroom. You've heard people use those expressions all the time, and that's fun. It's great. That's not culture. We see that often. We also see that the leaders of organizations think that they are the culture. They think that, they lead the organization, so therefore they are the culture. That's not the way it works. What you want is you want every single person in that organization to buy into a specific purpose for the organization so that we could all jump in the boat and row in the same direction, not just in the same direction, but in the right direction. So we see that often. We see that, sometimes the class, the organization is correct, and sometimes the leader is correct. They end up migrating toward what the leader believes, or vice versa. The leader realizes that, hey, I got this all wrong. I had it flipped upside down. Maybe I ought to listen to everyone else. And then the other thing too, Nick, is that there are real metrics in changing culture in an organization. It's not just nice to have. It's not just soft skills that a lot of people think it is. It's more about changing the KPIs within the organization. You'll see turnover change, absenteeism change, productivity change, et cetera. So I think there's some of the key things that we've seen over the last a couple decades.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. How do you take this, culture, perceived by most as soft skills, things that maybe hard metrics you don't have or tracking, but how do you take that culture and what are some metrics, or how do you make them hard metrics that you can track? Because I do feel like, to your point, when people think about culture, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, let's do Taco Tuesday or whatever. Let's have these, events. But maybe give some examples of some metrics that you can track. I know because you guys at Exit Systems, you guys have this, this plan in place for your clients. So what are some hard metrics that you can actually track?
So in the process, the index of alignment, which is, are we all rowing in the right direction? We have three indices in the cultural process. It's index of consonance. Are we all singing from the same sheet of music? Index of resonance, are we all resonating with the audience? And then index of alignment, are we all in the boat rowing the same direction? When the index of alignment is high, it correlates 86% to the Gallup Q12 study. So the Gallup Q12 study will tell you that, productivity changes, and there are hard metrics against that. Turnover changes, absenteeism changes, profitability changes. With exit systems, we look at all of those things within the organization. Sales metrics, profitability metrics. We have valuation analysis in there for understanding the value of the business as it tracks over the course of time. And you've got to let that time work for yourself. You can't do that in a 3-month interval. You have to do that over a year's time or 2 years' time. So there's a lot of very powerful metrics, KPIs that we look at, and they're all correlated to, the index of alignment. Are we all aligned together? Are we all working together?
You just hit on that. It's not going to happen overnight, maybe not even within a couple of months. I would imagine you have to have buy-in by everybody. Like you said, is correlated to a baseball season. Even looking at the major league season, it's 162 games over, was it 7 months, 6 months, whatever it is. You're not going to make a huge impact today, but stacking wins, getting 1% better every day, or committing to it long term. Those will add up over time, and then from where you started the season to where you ended the season, you should see tremendous growth and more buy-in and a lot of involvement.
We do. Well, we do or we don't. I mean, that's, we either do and it gets better, or we don't and we either exit or have a long chat with the leadership team. But, you could see whether or not people are bought into the process. And I'm talking about leaders all the way down to the people that mop the floors and answer the phones. In the beginning, sometimes you'll see people with their arms crossed and, like, this isn't going to work. We tried this before. To, having people come up to you and say, this has not only changed our business, but it's changed my life. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing here in the organization. So, a lot of changes take place within the organization, and it takes quite an effort. It's long term. I have said on many events, I was called to task, in a sense, about a week and a half ago, because I said this is hard work. And one of the women on the program, it was a Zoom speech. It was in front of 45, 50 people. And she called me and she said, yeah, I want to talk to you. I said, sure. And she said, listen, you got to stop saying that it's hard work. I said, but it is, Lisa. It is hard work. It's not easy. I mean, think about yourself and the changes that, if you went to the doctor, Nick, and the doctor said, hey, you've got to do this, this, and this in order to stay healthy or get 1% better each day, whether it's strength or weight or whatever, your blood work, you're either going to listen or you're not, right? And so, but you either buy into that or you're not going to buy into that. So I can't force people to do it. All I can do is say, here's the goal. Here's what we all agreed upon, and hope that they buy in. I mean, there are tons of psychological things that we use at Exit Systems to get people to understand that. We've got some, psychotherapists that we work with as well. It all depends on you.
And, do you think, do you think this is something when leaders think about, okay, and assess like where their business is at, like where does culture kind of fall in the pecking order of things they look at and things they need to maybe change or improve to have a significant impact?
I will tell you that if you have 1,000 conversations with 1,000 companies, I would bet you a steak dinner somewhere, that 999 of them will pick culture as one of the top issues in their organization.
Really? Okay.
They pick that. Now, the question is whether or not they have the intestinal fortitude to do anything about it. Very, very different. There's a very different chasm between it's important and I'm going to do something about it. So it's pretty high in the pecking order, but doing something to change it is challenging.
And that's where you guys at Exit Systems come into play, right? If they identify like I think we got to do something. I don't know how to go about doing it. That's where they would connect with someone like yourself and your team, and
Yeah.
you kind of walk them through that process, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So the nice thing about Exit Systems is we have something called Value Atlas, and Value Atlas looks at 18 unbiased areas in the organization based on the input from the leadership team. And it depends on, what comes out of that diagnostics tool. There's 18 areas. Now, the top 3 or 4 are what we focus on. Sometimes culture is not in the top 3 or 4. It may not be. It may be I have a sales problem. I have an IT problem. I have a finance problem. I have an operational problem. And that's what shows up in the Value Atlas diagnostics. However, what I will tell you is that in every single case, we have to make sure that culture is part of the process, right? So even if you have an IT problem, it's still going to be a people problem at some point. So the nice thing about the diagnostics tool, Value Atlas, is that it's unbiased and it comes out of an AI agent that we've spent. Charles Dentz, who runs Exit Systems, and I, or mostly Charles, has spent a lot of time developing this agent, and it gives you a fantastic report, a fantastic read on what to look at first, the top 3 or 4 areas that you need to focus on.
And so let's kind of shift gears here a little bit. We're still talking about same thing, but our audience typically, a lot of M&A advisors out there who listen to the show, they're helping advise business owners to sell their companies, right? And there's a lot that goes into, leading up to, hey, let's go to market and sell that. Are there things that are, some advice you'd give M&A advisors, as they're valuing companies or diving into, the DNA of the companies to see if they're ready to sell now? What are the motivators to exit, so on and so forth? Are there things that they can, implore to understand, culture, to understand, that side of the equation? Because, you can look at balance sheets and, P&Ls and all that sort of stuff and understand the financials, but the people component is a big thing. And there's value in, your team and your culture and your brand. Is there anything you can give a couple of things that we can look for when having those conversations with companies to understand, hey, do they need some work here?
Great question, Nick. Take your time. Take your time and tap the brakes, pump the brakes a little bit, and put a process in place in order to get the culture and the chemistry of the organization aligned. Oftentimes a leader may come to you as an M&A advisor and say, hey, I want to sell the business, I want to sell it immediately. I would say that, you're going to risk, a lot of times you feel like you're going to risk the transaction. And this is not, Exit Systems is not about the transaction. It's about transformation. So that there's a big difference between those 2 words. And if you can pump the brakes a little bit and talk to the leader about what their goals are and what they want out of this transformation, right? Because they're going to have a very difficult time walking away from something that they've built, right? So we were just at an EPI event, Exit Planning Institute event, not too long, last week or the week before, at Villanova University. And the people that were up on the panel that had sold their companies, one of the biggest issues they're dealing with is losing their identity. So, tap the brakes a little bit, get everyone in the organization to understand that culture is critical. The emergent leaders coming out of the organization, critical. So it's not about transition. It's not about the transaction. It's about the transformation. And I know that a lot of M&A advisors are looking for, the deal, but resist it if you can.
So once they understand, even from a buyer's perspective too, what are the key things that you have seen in your experience that, because you got, culture and integration, from seller to buyer, and there's a new company, and now you're mixing, whether maybe it's a strategic, or maybe it's a private equity firm, or maybe it's part of their portfolio. it's an add-on to their portfolio. There's obviously integration there as far as cultures and just the two businesses meshing together. What are you seeing on the buyer side that they're really looking for in companies as it relates to just the culture that they have?
I think that's another brilliant question. I mean, a lot of buyers are looking to de-risk the deal. They want to mitigate as much risk as possible. So, how do you mitigate risk? You mitigate risk by uncovering the skeletons in the closet of the selling organization prior to or during due diligence. So, what does that really mean? How is the culture? Is the culture in the organization aligned or is it toxic? How is every other aspect of the business aligned to the promise that we make to the organization? And begin to uncover those things, Nick, because oftentimes, when you're not de-risking a deal, and a buyer comes in and it's fraught with potholes and minefields, that's disquieting for a buyer. And we're really fortunate at Exit Systems. We look at organizations that are partner organizations. I'll give you one quick example. We use a company called Evalify. Evalify will take a look at 220 million IP and patent infringement opportunities around 170 jurisdictions around the world. And if you have some sort of an IP infringement, so how do you de-risk that? Well, you look at whether or not there's an infringement against a big company like a Microsoft or an AWS or any other organization out there. And they have uncovered these multi-million-dollar potential, lawsuits that could take place, or actually liabilities that are in front of them that de-risk the deal. So the more you can de-risk, the more buyers feel comfortable with the deal. And the best way to de-risk a deal is to make sure everybody is on the same page.
Yeah. And identify those early, because you want to get that out in front. You don't want to be hiding. Like I said, talk about the skeletons in the closet. You don't want to find out at the 11th hour that you got some more skeletons in the closet.
True. Very true.
For business owners looking to exit, let's say 2 to 3 years out, what is one meaningful thing that you see that they could, without knowing obviously the details of the business, but like what's one common thing that you think business owners can adopt from a culture perspective, 2, 3 years out of an exit to have it be a meaningful impact, a positive impact when they are going to be ready to sell?
Well, I think, make sure that your team and your bench is prepared for the next step, and you're prepared for the next step. Unfortunately, a lot of leaders are they have their identity tied to the company. So if you feel like, okay, so someone's going to buy my business and then no one's ever going to call me president of my company anymore, how am I going to deal with that? I don't really have, when I leave, a lot of institutional knowledge is up in my head. When I talk about culture, this isn't about everyone holding hands and getting together and getting to care for one another. This is a transfer of knowledge. It might, me selecting 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people within the organization that I can teach over the next 3 or 4 years some of the things that I've run across and what to look for, what to not, what to avoid. So any kind of preparation, SOPs, standard operating procedures inside the organization, operational efficiency measures, making sure that all of your, HR documents are in order. All of those things have everything to do with culture inside the organization. So if you think for 1 minute that when you get to the point in time where you're ready to exit and some buyer's going to come in and say, God, you don't have any SOPs, or, your people are not in the same, I don't feel like they're in the same boat. You think some buyer's going to come in and suck that up? I doubt it. So prepare as early as you can and get everyone to make sure everyone's on the same team. These surveys that we put together, Nick, are not that expensive, but they're very revealing.
Right. That's amazing and good advice. And yeah, so starting early is always a great thing. You want to make that transfer, that transition as smooth as possible for you, for your team, for the buyer, and all great advice. And culture is a huge thing, and you can, and according to Mark and their team and at Exit Systems, you can have hard metrics that you can track that are going to be telling of whether or not your culture is good, bad, or needs improvement.
Yep.
So Mark, really appreciate all that insight. I do want to ask you too, before we let you go here, you have a TV show you've been doing for a while called Language of Leadership. Tell our listeners about your show. Where can they find it? What are they going to learn from it? Like, and why do you do it?
Well, I'll start with why I do it. I've done a series of TV shows over the last 8.5 years, and this one seemed to resonate with me and the audience. Language of leadership is exactly what we're talking about, Nick. It's really not just about the everyday language that we use with organizations, with our team, with our department, with our company, but how that manifests itself into behavior each and every day. I interview people from leaders of teams to leaders of very large organizations to coaches and consultants who work in helping organizations grow or prosper. It's every week, 9:00 on a streaming network called NetStream. That's KNET. The K is silent, STREAM.com. And you can find me on YouTube as well. But the show airs on Roku, Apple TV, and a Fire Stick as well. So it's enjoyable. I get a lot out of it because I learn a lot from the guests that show up, just like you do. So
yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, make sure to check that out. Obviously, you'll learn some great information, and it's like I said, Mark, you bring on some great guests, and obviously expertise is part of that as well. So definitely worth the time to check that out and make sure you do so. And Mark, anything else? Where else can our listeners find more about you?
I don't know if you're signed up or not, but I have to make sure Nick Olsen is a guest on Language of Leadership, my friend. So
I did sign up.
That's right. You did sign. Okay. Yeah.
I believe we're recording March,
March.
So,
okay.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. Listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you've done. I love the fact that you are a baseball fan and player. Listen, I think we speak a different language, honestly. I think baseball players understand one another.
Exactly.
We're a different breed. It's good. But thank you for this. I appreciate it very much, Nick. I really do.
Yeah. Awesome, Mark. And where can our listeners find out more about Exit Systems?
Exit Systems is easy. It's EXIT Systems AI.com. So EXITSYSTEMS AI.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well under Mark Iorio, and you could try my cell. I'll pick it up.
Amazing. Yeah, go check out their website, learn about all the things we talked about. There's a bunch more information on their site that can dive deeper in the conversation that Mark and I had today. So definitely go to their website and reach out to Mark if you want to connect. Mark, thank you so much for joining today. That is our episode. And please make sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. Subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you're up to date as to when a new episode airs, and tune in every week. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.